So there was a pretty big controversy that started this past weekend relating to one of my most anticipated upcoming games. For those of you who may be living under a rock, Helena Taylor, the OG voice of Bayonetta, who's voiced the character all the way up to the newest upcoming installment, Bayonetta 3, who we were originally told would not be returning to the role due to, quote, overlapping circumstances, inferring that she had a scheduling conflict or something, which I immediately, when that came out, thought it was a little weird, considering this is her main iconic role. Like, could you imagine Nolan North being like, yeah, guys, I'm sorry, can't do Nathan Drake in Uncharted 5, I'm busy that day, so, you're gonna have to recast me. Like, what? You'd think the studio and the talent would figure out a way to make everything work so the original voice could continue being the voice. But Taylor came out this past weekend and blew this whole claim out of the water with a tweet thread that included several videos of her addressing what she claims are the real reason she's not returning as gaming's favorite witch, calling on fans of the game, of which I was not aware Bayonetters was a thing, a word to call Bayonetta fans, as well as the people at Platinum and Nintendo, don't forget. While it wouldn't be shocking if people at Nintendo weren't aware of all these things, it's not like they're not involved at all. They are publishing this game. So yeah, I want to play the first video for you guys in its entirety, so here it is.
Hello, my name's Helena Taylor, and I am the voice of Bayonetta, and I would like to explain to you why I didn't voice Bayonetta 3. The Bayonetta franchise made an approximated $450 million. That's not including merchandise. As an actor, I trained for a total of 7.5 years. 3 years at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, LAMDA, with voice coach Barbara Barkery, and 4.5 years with the legendary Larry Moss in Los Angeles. And what did they think this was worth? What did they offer to pay me? The final offer to do the whole game as a buyout, a flat rate, was $4,000 US. This is an insult to me, the amount of time that I took to work on my talent and everything that I have given to this game and to the fans. I am asking the fans to boycott this game and instead spend the money that you would have spent on this game donating it to charity. I didn't want the world. I didn't ask for too much. I was just asking for a decent, dignified living wage. What they did was legal, but it was immoral.
Yes, $4,000, she claims, is what they offered her to return as the main character in this AAA major release, which just seems so low to me. Now, I'll fully admit, I'm not an expert in these matters. I don't know what the going rates are for different types of voice work. And it's one of those things, too, that it's going to be incredibly varied depending on the talent, the project, everything. I mean, just like a movie, right? I mean, there are people who act in movies for free, and there are people who act for hundreds of millions of dollars. And, I've seen all sorts of different reactions, even from people who do voiceover work, saying that for this size of a project, it's not that crazy. But myself, I feel like this is a fairly decent sized role, and it's one that we already have an iconic voice established for it. As Taylor discusses in these videos, she's the one who invented this voice. Even though someone else is doing it, they're clearly mimicking her. It's certainly not like Jennifer Hale's Bayonetta is something completely different. And it seems to me like she would deserve more than this for her contributions to this character, I mean, if this is what's fair after all her contributions to this role, to this character, to this franchise up till this point, when we're heading into what will almost surely be the most successful Bayonetta game. I mean, from what we're seeing from the videos, it certainly appears to be like the most ambitious Bayonetta game to date. It's going to be launching on the Nintendo Switch. Yes, Bayonetta 1 and 2 ended up coming to Nintendo Switch, but those were ports, those were re-releases. And when we're seeing some of these other less successful franchises, let's say, make their Switch debut, Metroid Dread anyone, they oftentimes end up being the most successful game in the franchise. So with all that considered, everything that's led us to this point, if what Taylor's worth on this game is $4,000, I certainly want to know what like her work in the original game was worth, because if this game it's worth $4,000, for the first game was she paid like a couple $100? Because yeah, then, you know, in terms of the progression of things, I guess $4,000 would be fair, but I highly doubt that was the case. Now, she also calls for a full-on boycott of this game, which, even though I think the amount, the compensation here is low, I think calling for a boycott over a lowball offer is a bit excessive. I mean, it's not like they screwed her out of money or something, promised to pay her so much and, you know, didn't pay her. It's, it's not an Activision Blizzard, all the, sexual harassment type stuff. I mean, these are the sorts of issues that, when it comes to thinking about boycotting a game, a company, that I think of. Now, I think this largely has to do with the next clip I'm going to show, and I went back and forth if I was going to, play this clip from her thread, because it's sad. And it gives the sense that perhaps Taylor's kind of feeling like she's in a position where she doesn't really have much to lose at this point. Not only is she going off on this company, calling for this boycott, but she's doing it while breaking an NDA, which can be a huge issue for her. Just spoiling a game, right, with and under an NDA can get you in legal trouble. So this could be a big problem for her, and it seems extreme to put yourself in this position. But again, if everything she's saying in these videos is true, it's sad. So I'm going to play the clip, and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
But if you're someone who cares about people, who cares about the world around you, who cares about who gets hurt with these financial decisions, then I urge you to boycott this game. I decided to do it to stand up in solidarity with people all over the world who do not get paid properly for their talents. Fat cats cream off the top and leave us the rotten crumbs. In England right now, there are nurses going to food banks to feed their children. This is not right. This is not acceptable. It impacts mental health. Because of it, I suffered from depression and anxiety. I worried that I was going to be on the streets. That terrified me so much that once I was suicidal. I am not afraid of the non-disclosure agreement. I can't even afford to run a car. What are they going to do? Take my clothes? Good luck to them. Bayonetta always stands up for those with less power and stands up for what is right. And in doing this, you stand with her.
The idea that such a recognizable voice talent could even be in this position where she feels like she has nothing to lose. It feels wrong, right? I mean, hearing that line talking about, these possible repercussions and her just being like, what are they going to do? Take my clothes? Just so terrible. And while I think it makes this idea that, she was lowballed, I think, over the role even worse, I think it's important to point out, and nobody loves hating on these big companies, corporations more than me, but it's not like Platinum and or Nintendo, anybody is solely at fault for her being in this position, if this is all true. Again, I feel terrible for her, but what if there wasn't even a Bayonetta 3? It certainly wasn't a sure shot after the performance of the second game. So, I mean, it's like, if that was the case and she was in this position, would it still be Platinum's fault? So I think it's important as we discuss this, as we criticize perhaps this stuff, that, we make sure to keep the arguments, genuine and fair. I don't think it's fair to be like, oh my gosh, she's in this terrible situation and it's Platinum's fault. But I do think it's still fair to argue that that was a lowball offer, and especially considering her situation, because I'm going to put out a little bit of headcanon here. These aren't things she necessarily said, but given the fact that she was willing to share this stuff with the world, that it is possible that she shared this stuff with them. And if that's the case, if they knew what she was going through, again, after she's put in all this work, effort into the character, the franchise, from the beginning, just like everybody else, and they still lowballed her like this, once more, a little bit of this is headcanon from me, but I could see that being the case. If that ends up being true, this is incredibly disgusting. Now, there are, as I said, multiple of these videos. They're all a couple of minutes long, so if you want the full rundown of everything she said, I suggest you watch them all for yourself. But to summarize some of the other stuff that went on here, well, for one, I think it should be noted that she says she has no issues with Jennifer Hale taking over the role. She does mention that she doesn't think it's right for Hale to be fully taking over as Bayonetta, though. Taylor should still be the one that's out there signing autographs. That is Bayonetta, which, I would mostly agree with, but again, depending on how this all plays out, who knows. But she does say she wishes Hale the best. Hale also, almost certainly didn't know about all this behind the scenes stuff, and apparently very few did. Since these videos have gone viral, there have been other talents on the game liking and retweeting stuff in support of Taylor. So I definitely don't think and hope this isn't a situation where, Jennifer Hale's going to start getting a bunch of backlash for taking this job. I mean, fans are certainly upset about all this stuff, but make sure you appropriately direct that anger if you have it. I doubt Jennifer Hale knew about all this stuff. It's just, she's just taking a job, nothing wrong with that. Which, in terms of directing some of this hate, there was another name that she dropped in these vids. She actually says at one point the initial offer she got to come back as Bayonetta was worse, I guess, than $4,000. And I guess when she got the initial offer is when she decided to write directly to Hideki Kamiya about it, who is the executive director of this game, is just an overall main player over at Platinum. Certainly somebody who would make sense to reach out to if you had some problems. Now, before I get into that, I want to say that I've always liked Kamiya. I think he does great work, and I've found his antics funny. If you're not aware, he's known for being a total asshole on Twitter, blocking people, getting really pissed when they reply or quote tweet him in English. There was even a tier on the Wonderful 101 Switch port Kickstarter where you could get blocked by him as a joke, making fun of all this. I've never had an issue with that stuff, because I see people, it's pretty pathetic, in my opinion. People who I've seen thinking the same as me laughed at this stuff in the past, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, I always knew he was so problematic. Give me a break, dude. I know it's Twitter, but you can have you can pretend to have a little bit of a backbone. And I also don't think it's right to conflate these things. People want to start screaming about mean tweets from 2017, and it's like, yeah, I just kind of want to focus on Bayonetta's voice actress being worried about living on the streets, if that's okay. So again, Taylor claims she wrote directly to him and got a response where he fluffed her up, talked about how he remembers meeting her for the first time. It's a memory he's going to cherish. The fans really want her to come back and do this, etc. And she says that is actually when they offered her the $4,000. Kamiya responded to this on Twitter, as only he does. I think this was a bit of a broken translation, but his tweet said, quote, sad and deplorable about the attitude of untruth. That's what all I can tell now. By the way, beware of my rules. That end part clearly referencing his fast fingers on that block button. His Twitter then later went down. People were speculating, did he delete it? I guess there's a possibility because, again, he's so famous for blocking people that he may have been blocking people at such a fast rate they thought he was a bot or got hacked or something. I don't really know much about how Twitter works, so I don't know if that's really a thing, but I just thought it was funny. And now he's apparently back. I haven't seen any more decoding of his tweets, so I don't know if he's talking more about this or anything. But the main thing I would note here, going back to this idea of, oh, well, it's not really that bad of an offer and stuff like that. If that's the case, why is he out there talking about the attitude of untruth? That was such a good offer. Why would he be saying she's lying? Seems a bit odd to me if you're going with that argument. Would make sense, though, if he's trying to say that's not what happened, that's not what she was offered. But once more, it doesn't really help this whole argument of, oh, if that's what they offered her, then that's such a great deal. And that pretty much catches us up to now. And so I want to discuss more of my thoughts on this and where I think things should go from here. To start, I think it's important to reiterate that we don't have much to go off of in terms of actual evidence. I think these videos are highly convincing in terms of the emotions in them. They certainly come off as genuine to me, but there isn't much in terms of actual proof. On the other side of things, similarly, they haven't come out to prove anything, but I would say the statement, not Kamiya's response, but the initial statement by Platinum saying she was unavailable or whatever, seems even more, it was unlikely then. Like I said, when I first read that, I just thought it was weird. Now that seems almost impossible to believe. So I would say there are red flags, even though we know so little, there are some red flags coming from Platinum's side, because even if the number she's thrown out there, $4,000, even if that's completely untrue, if they come out and have evident proof that they offered her $1 million and she turned it down, said it wasn't enough money, even if that's the case, they still lied about the reasoning. It wasn't some scheduling conflict. So I think it's highly likely that they at least lied about that. In terms of this monetary compensation aspect, it does seem really odd to me given how it all ended up playing out. To think that they offered Taylor, as she claims, $4,000 to reprise her role, this role that she is well known for, that everyone even admits fans wanted and expected to see her come back for, and because that offer is so low, she turns it down, so they end up going with Jennifer Hale, who is one of those voice actors like a Troy Baker who seems to show up everywhere, is super in demand. The voice of FemShep, one of the best pieces of voice work ever. I mean, how many people even said, they decided to go with FemShep because Jennifer Hale's voice acting was so good in that game. I just can't imagine her being a cheaper option or taking pay even similar to that. Like, when I heard the confirmation that it was Hale who was doing the voice in Bayonetta 3, while I thought the reasoning, like I said, was odd, Taylor being unavailable, when I heard Jennifer Hale was taking over, I figured they were trying to go above and beyond because of this Taylor not being able to do it. Like, hey, yes, Taylor couldn't do it, but we made sure to spend the big money to get the cream of the crop as her replacement. I'd assume all day her rate is much more expensive. If this whole thing was always an issue of money, and if it is true that the most they were willing to offer Taylor was $4,000, and of course she should be your number one pick, she should be the person you want because she's been Bayonetta for every game up until this point, that should be the cap. So I would assume that Hale, if she's the replacement, would be certainly making no more than that, but likely even less. Right? Because it's like, if that was the max you were willing to pay who should be your number one choice, this person should be making less. And it's like, so, and again, I don't claim to know all these prices, but is that the going rate? Is it a couple grand to get Jennifer Hale to voice a main character in your big game from start to finish? Is that the rate? And I'm sure many devs, if that is the case, would love to know about it. If that's not the case, if they're paying Hale a much larger sum, that would kind of feel like a blow against Taylor's story. Like, why would they offer someone else more money than the person who has been Bayonetta from the jump, who everyone would expect to be Bayonetta going forward? Surely Hale's not the one who's going to come out and say anything because, she's under similar NDAs. And here's where I could see this getting a bit ugly. Perhaps there was some sort of issue between Taylor and the people at Platinum, and maybe they lowballed her purposefully because they didn't want to do business with her anymore for whatever reason. As she even says in the video, everything they did is fully in their legal right. They don't have to use her. They don't have to offer her any money for the role, not a single dollar. But if there isn't some sort of issue that, again, we're not aware of, it seems crazy that they wouldn't offer her more money. With this sort of he said, she said drama, we've got to be cautious. I always say this when we're talking about possibly taking a side with so little evidence. Once more, I thought the video seemed very convincing, but it certainly doesn't prove anything. Since Hideki did respond to this, calling BS, if I was either party, I would post, leak if you have to, whatever you got. Taylor says her friend helped her write the letter to him directly that he responded to. Where are those messages? When she talks about the initial offer that prompted her to message him, where's that? Because whoever is in the right here should be wanting as much of this stuff to get out as possible. Especially in Taylor's position of already breaking the NDA. It's like at this point you may as well just keep going. And I'd be curious to know about her compensation history, any other deals she had for the previous games. How does that compare to this? Because you'd assume, as with entertainment, movies, TV, as you play a character longer, your compensation, your bargaining power typically goes up because you're synonymous with that character and they don't want to recast you. Even though in this case it is just your voice, still, like I said at the top, if Naughty Dog wanted to do an Uncharted 5, let's say, I'd assume Nolan North would get a pretty big payday, because what are they going to do? Recast him now when everyone thinks of his voice when they think of the character? As I also said, the Bayonetta franchise isn't something on that level, but it's still the same situation. Like, you'd think that you'd want to pay more to keep what works, to deliver what people want. So again, this whole thing just being about money seems a bit weird when they ended up going with such a big name voice talent. Maybe there are some other issues at play. And if Taylor is lying, Platinum, I mean, it's pretty obvious they should just go after her legally for violating the NDA. Let all this stuff come out in court if you have nothing to hide. But I can tell you, for one, everyone there, not just Kamiya, the entire staff, even Nintendo, right? Better hope this isn't true, because this is an incredibly bad look. The voice actress of one of your iconic characters talking about how she's worried about living on the streets? Nintendo always talks all this shit about protecting their image with their BS copyright strikes. I don't think this is going to help your image too much, guys. And Platinum, I can only imagine what her message to you may have looked like. And if it's true, in response, you offered her a measly $4,000? And if it is true, let's talk a bit about what the corporate strategy should be from Platinum and even Nintendo. Obviously, you shouldn't go after her. It's still your legal right to, but you are the ones who look awful in this situation, and you're a big company. Sales are your biggest concern. I don't think you want to go making this worse. There isn't much I think Platinum can do right now to make amends for this. Certainly in terms of Bayonetta 3. I mean, the game is done. It's coming out in a couple weeks. That's not changing. If I was Platinum, if I was running the company, I'd be big worried about this. Like I said already, this is a more niche franchise, driven largely by the hardcore fans, the Bayonetters. Having this be the reason the game is trending, your company is trending prior to release, is bad. It's very bad. Like I said, I think Nintendo should even be very upset that they're tied to this whole ordeal. And at this point, there's certainly no way people at Nintendo aren't aware of this. Anyone over there, certainly who's making decisions dealing with Platinum with this game, there's no way now they don't know about this drama. It's too big. I mean, the first video in that thread, the last time I checked, had like over 8 million views. This isn't something you're just going to sweep under the rug, which reinforcing what I would say are the big concerns with this being a more niche franchise. I can promise you, Bayonetta 3, even under optimal conditions, was never going to sell over 8 million copies. So multiple times the amount of people that even potentially would have bought this game have seen these videos, and that's why they should see this as such a big problem. So I think the best case scenario, if this stuff is all true, and this is where I put my businessman hat on, okay guys? What I think they should do is immediately call Taylor and work out some sort of deal about contracting her for future Bayonetta work. Just so you can put out a broad statement that she's coming back into the fold in some capacity. Surely it's too soon to guarantee like, oh, she's coming back for Bayonetta 4. Who knows if there will even be a Bayonetta 4? There almost wasn't a Bayonetta 2. But having something as a goodwill PR move to put out that you've made amends, it probably cost you certainly much more than you were offering her to play Bayonetta for the whole game, but that's your fault. You should have just paid her what she was worth to begin with, and you wouldn't have any of these problems. And yeah, you're probably not even sure what you would contract her to do at this point. You just confirm something is in the works. Then Taylor can put out a new video where she thanks the fans for their support, for putting you all on blast, the fan outrage which woke you idiots up and got you to pay her what she's worth, again for future Bayonetta projects. Could end up being a 2-minute short film, who knows. Nintendo, I think, can also come into this as well, putting her as Bayonetta, perhaps in future Nintendo ads and that. There's plenty of stuff you can do with her as Bayonetta beyond her just being in either like this upcoming game or confirming she's returning for Bayonetta 4, and still give her and the fans the dub here, because that's the only way I think you get out of this mostly unscathed. And time's ticking on that release date. I wouldn't wait too long to figure this out, because I do think, given again the more niche nature of this game, when you've got a more niche thing, when your big fans who follow you make up a large portion of your total sales, I think this could be a major problem. The timing is awful. The game is about to come out. This story is still going to be fresh on people's minds when it does drop. And if they do nothing, yeah, I think they're going to feel it. If this was Call of Duty or something, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal sales-wise. A game that sells millions of copies every year, whether or not it's even good, a majority of the players wouldn't even have a clue that something like this is happening. But with Bayonetta, I think a good amount of your potential players are aware of this, and it may affect their decision, especially when the person in question, the person that all your fans are now feeling bad for, is actively calling for a boycott. Like, there is no question about it. She does not want people to buy this game. I think this could be a significant problem. This isn't like a random section of Pokemon fans calling to boycott the next Pokemon game, one of those type instances. Like, this could really hurt sales. As for myself, with this call for a boycott, do I think people should boycott it? I try. I've got a tendency, obviously, to run my mouth when I get pissed off, but I do try to not straight up call for boycotts too often. More so I say, like, I'm not supporting a game or this company for this reason unless things change. For right now, will I be canceling my Bayonetta 3 pre-order? And I got the collector's edition too, goddammit. As of right now, I'm undecided. It's kind of tough because, as I've said, we don't have that much concrete info. I would like to know more. Like, if this all comes out that Taylor's telling the 100% truth, I'm out. But I do think there's a good chance that this ends up getting legal. I think it likely already could be getting legal, and we might not get to the bottom of this for a long time. And so it's like, do you wait? Like, if we don't get an update before the game releases, do you say, I'm just going to wait till we hear more and end up waiting like a year or more until we find out what's actually going on? I think what I'm going to do is if we don't get a significant update between now and when the game releases, I'm still going to pick it up, cover it, review it, still mentioning all this drama that's going on around it, but give the game itself a fair shake. And if we do end up getting a significant update and it's damning to Platinum, then as I've said in the past, as I tend to say more lately, there are plenty of other games I can play. It sucks because, this is a game I was very much looking forward to, very excited for, but if I'm not feeling the circumstances around it, yeah, I can pass and move on to something else, maybe tackle the backlog a bit if I've got to wait for the next big game I'm looking forward to. Not a big issue. Anyway, with that, finally, how long did this video go on for? This video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on this whole Helena Taylor, Platinum Games, Bayonetta 3 controversy in the comments. What do you think about this situation so far? Are you planning on boycotting the game based off of what we know, even waiting, holding off to pick it up till we find out more? And what do you think Platinum and perhaps Nintendo could do to rectify this situation if it all ends up being true? And also, how do you think they're going to handle it? As always, I'm the Shy Guy, Johnny Zakari, and thanks for watching.